Oh God. Hello there, and in this video I'm going to be doing a service on my 2012 Volvo XC60 D5. Now, I've had this car back almost a year and it's due, and it's going to be quite a big one, this one. It's going to be air filter, fuel filter and oil filter. I'm not doing the pollen filter. I've done it once before on this car and frankly it was a colossal pain in the backside. But anyway, enough of that. Let me show you what parts we're going to be using to service this car with. Okay, so here's all the parts I'm going to be using today for the service. So I've got a genuine Volvo air filter, a genuine Volvo fuel filter and a genuine Volvo oil filter with an aluminium crush washer. You should always replace these. If you don't, you will probably get a leak. Ask me how I know. And then the other thing we've got is 6 litres of the correct specification oil for this engine, which is 0W30 with an A5B5 spec. It's very important if you're changing oil in one of these that you use the correct specification oil. I'm not a big believer in messing about with manufacturer recommended viscosities. At the end of the day, somebody has been paid a lot of money and knows a lot more about engineering than I do, that has worked out what oil's supposed to go in these engines, so that's what I tend to stick with. I'll pop the full price for this service kit on screen now. I bought it from Volvo Parts Trade on eBay, not a sponsor. And I'll also put alongside the same price if you wanted to buy the OEM equivalent manufacturer parts. So these two filters, the fuel filter and the oil filter, are manufactured by MAN, and the air filter is manufactured by, I think, Marley, I think it is. And then what I would recommend for the oil, I think, is a Voltec specification oil. So I'll pop that price on screen now, probably based on either Amazon or AutoDoc, just so that you've got an idea what the price difference is. And the other thing I'm going to do, by the way, as part of this service today, is I'm actually going to scan the vehicle with my top scan. I'll use that to reset the service indicator on it, and I'm also going to do a bit of a health check on the modules and just check to see whether or not there's any other problems with the car that might be ongoing at the moment that we need to investigate further. But anyway, that being said, I think the first job I'm going to do is actually the fuel filter. The reason I want to do the fuel filter first is I'm going to need to run the car up to temperature, and when you change the fuel filter it can take a little bit of time to bleed the system and get the engine running right and smooth. So for me, it makes sense to do that one first. So we're going to get the rear of this car up on ramps, and then we'll get underneath and we'll start getting everything to bits. Okay, so here's the fuel filter housing. It's quite tight on these all-wheel drive D5 XC90s because you've got an anti-roll bar and a drive shaft in the way, but to memory, I think when I did this before, I did just about manage to turn this out. And the first thing you've got to do is you've got to get this bottom bleed screw off, because I think it just gives you a couple of extra mil then to get the whole housing clear. And that also drains the filter housing of fuel and just makes the whole job a little bit less messy. You can, if you want to, drop the anti-roll bar on these two bolts there to make access a little bit easier. But like I say, I've done this before and it shouldn't be necessary. Okay, I've got a few extra lumens on the job for you now. So this is an 18mm. This little drain plug here, unfortunately, not a lot of room, so I'm going to have to do it in tiny little turns, but we will get there. As you can see, it's one of those jobs where everything's kind of in the way. Why they didn't put this in a more accessible location, I don't know. The other thing I remember last time is that diesel went everywhere when I did this last time. In fact, let me go and find, I bet I've got a ratcheting 18mm stubby somewhere. Let me go and find that. There we go, it started dribbling whilst I've been gone. Let's just see if I can get this little 18mm. Yeah, that's easier, isn't it? I love these things, these little ratcheting spanners. Very, very, very handy. So it'll go everywhere if I remember correctly, all over the anti-roll bar. Can't remember if it dribbles out the hole first. I was expecting it to, but it hasn't started yet. You ready? Here comes the mess. Told you. Oh, just let that drain out. It's a bit more splishy sploshy than I wanted it to be, I must say. I seem to remember it pouring a bit better than this last time, but never mind. Right, let's get this done. I might move you out of the way, to be honest with you, because I think the GoPro's getting covered in diesel. There we go, I think it's just about finished draining now. That's better. So we've got a 32mm here to get this fuel filter housing undone. That just slots on there. And again, there isn't a huge amount of room here, unfortunately. There we go. Obviously can't take it down too far like that, because otherwise I'll get that and that stuck together. It should be loose enough now to come off and, well, make another enormous mess, I think. Now we've got the fiddly bit. I think this does come out with a little bit of manoeuvring and patience, if I remember correctly. Really should have watched the video I recorded a couple of years ago when I did this to see how it was I got it out, but I did get it out. There we go. Like I say, it's a bit fiddly, but you can get it out. That's why a lot of people remove the anti-roll bar just to make life easier. There we go, we're going to get another drip of diesel. Lovely. Make sure that's actually going in the container. And there's our diesel filter, and to be honest with you, it's looking ready. Yeah, that was ready. This was done about 30,000 miles ago, I'm going to say. Okie dokie, so there's the old fuel filter, and as I said, as it was coming out, it's looking pretty grim. And that's the little cap housing there. It's got a little bit of grit in it, actually. I might just go and grab some brake clean and give that a bit of a clean out. But before I do anything else, just to make sure I don't have to put the old bits back, is we're just going to compare the new and old filters, just to make sure that they are the same. I say I did order them through a Volvo dealer, but it's always worth double checking with your parts, just to make sure that you don't run into any problems later on. Ugh. Right in my face. Ugh, right in my face. Doing well there. Right in my face. There you go. Get that old seal out. I'm just going to make sure there's no bits of grit sat in there. This is true with the oil filters as well. If you have any grit sat in the bottom of there against that seal, it's quite often why they wind up leaking. Right, get that in when it wants to go in. This is a bit like when I was chasing the oil seal on the XC90 the other week. There we go. Obviously trying to filter this in without catching all the grit and grime all over the sorry if you heard that noise, that's one of the local racing knobheads. Right, remember correctly, it just goes up there with a nice positive click and it's in place. There we go. And again, same sort of shenanigans basically of just trying to gently get this in. I might speed this up just to save your sanity and mine. Again, I should have paid a little bit more attention to how I got it out. There we go. Not too bad. Hand tight initially. There we go. This is actually an opportunity for me to debut my new little torque wrench as well, which I bought recently. I bought these on the recommendation of Leanne at Whiteland Restorations. And so I've got this set to torque up to 25.5 Newton meters. It's not quite there yet because the housing hasn't stopped. There we go. So that should be torqued up. Obviously I will check that later and just make sure we don't have any leaks. Right, let's get this bottom bolt done up. I don't know if you should renew the O-ring seals in that. Probably something I ought to look at next time, I suspect. Let's get my little 18mm stubby back on the job. We want Titan, don't we? Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Something I forgot recently on a video I've not yet published when I was looking at the brake creak on the XC90. I might have slightly turned something the wrong way and nearly broken something, which would have been very, 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 very bad. I will include that because the whole point of this channel really is me learning how to do stuff and sort of showing you mistakes as well as successes, so you might cringe though when you see that. Again, this is plastic going into plastic, so I'm actually quite happy I'm using a short spanner. It's literally just got to be enough that it's done up, and obviously I will come back and check this and make sure it's not leaking. But before I do that, I need to get a bit Rainman Ray on it, and of course that means attacking everything with a nice healthy dose of brake clean. Bit more. There we go, that should do. So what we need to do now is we're going to jump into the car. I'm going to go through the bleeding procedure, because you don't want to just jump in the car having done this and try and start it, because it's just going to crank and crank and crank and crank and pull a load of air through into the fuel system, which would not be ideal. So I'm going to clean my hands up a bit and then we'll go and jump in the car and we'll get everything bled. Do expect some rough running, however, I know from last time. What we're going to do, I'm going to stick the keys in the ignition, and we're going to hold down the start button and see how it says ignition on. Do not press the brake pedal to start. Hold it down for 6 seconds. You should be able to hear the fuel system priming, which I think I can, and then turn the ignition off. And I'm going to repeat that process about 5 or 6 times to reprime the fuel system before I try and start it. Right, okay, so I think I've done that enough times now. I'm expecting this to cough and splutter. I'm sure the last time I did this it did, so I'm going to try firing it up now and we'll see how it behaves. It may chug, it may even stop. Like I say, if it does, don't panic, you just need to bleed the fuel system a little bit more. There we go, it's kicked into life. It may run a little bit lumpy. Just going to give it a bit of a high idle. And I'll do that now for just a couple of minutes and just see if it coughs and splutters at all. Okay, we're just going to knock it off. And I'll just try starting it again now and just see whether or not it starts okay. Okay, that seems all right. That's settled back down now into a normal start, actually. That idle sounds much more normal. Let's just stop it again. Give it one more start. Yeah, I can hold it at a specific RPM and it will do it. When it's still bleeding, you'll watch and the RPM will just waver ever so slightly because there's a little bit of air still in the system. But I'm happy enough with that now. Let's go and have a quick look underneath and just make sure that everything's still nice and dry and we're not leaking. That's interesting. Got a line of water in that exhaust there. That's a little concerning. That would suggest that there's maybe... I wonder if I've got a slight blow or something. Yeah, I've got a drip of water on that exhaust, look. I think this back box might be starting to go. I mean, it is the original exhaust system, so that's something to look out for. Right, next job, I'm going to let the car warm up a bit, and then we will drop the under tray and do the engine oil. And I'm also going to check in on a repair that I did quite a long time ago. Just while I was warming the XC60 up, I've just tipped the contents of the diesel out, and I've noticed there's a load of rust in it. Little bits of rust, look. Yeah, interesting. So it's not just VEP that seems to enjoy having rust in its fuel system. Right then, so I've run the car for about 15 minutes, warmed the oil up a bit, and now we're going to spin it round and I'm going to get it as level as I can get it on the driveway. Now I know that still means I'm going to have a slight slope towards me. That is not ideal, but with these engines, with these sort of DPF generation Euro 4 and Euro 5 engines, if I get a slight overread on my dipstick as I'm setting the level, it's not necessarily a bad thing because you don't want to overfill them. These cars have a protection mechanism built into them to deal with the DPF cycle and oil dilution, and basically if your oil level gets too high, you'll get a message on the car that says engine system service required and you've got to lower it. I think the recommendation is about 2/3 full. But like I say, if you start going in the comments, oh, you're not going to get a proper drain, you're not fully level. I know, I understand. I am working within, unfortunately, the limitations that I have here. And there's absolutely no way I'm going to get an XC60 in there. Plus, there's a BX there. Right, okay, so I've just re-manoeuvred everything. I've gone a little bit further up the driveway than before, and I've just checked it. Again, this may not be the most scientific measure in the world, but I have thrown a spirit level in the back of the car, and the bubble is right in the middle. I don't know if you can see that or not, but trust me, it's right in the middle. So that is going to be as level as I can get it realistically, I think. So I'm going to knock it off, let the oil settle. We'll see what measure we've got on the dipstick at the moment. I know it doesn't use any oil, and we'll then use that as our baseline basically for setting the level later on. Right, okay, so I've let everything sit for 10 minutes. I'm now going to check the level on my dipstick. This is sometimes referred to, by the way, as a police-issued dipstick. When the authorities used these cars, they tended to retrofit these so that they didn't have to rely exclusively on the electronic gauge. So I'm just going to check that now and just see what sort of level we're at. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on camera. I might do a closer shot in a minute with the mobile. In fact, I probably will insert a closer shot from the mobile, but we're about on the halfway marker, which is what I would expect. Like I say, I think it's halfway or 2/3 full is what Volvo recommend on these, but you don't want to fill them up to the max line, because if you do, you may encounter problems later on down the line. Right, next stage is to get this under tray off, which is held on by T30 Torx bits. If you suddenly see me run underneath the car, run away from underneath the car and scream, it's because I've had a wasp that's been irritating me for the last 5 minutes as well. If it's not careful, it's going to have an encounter with a can of brake clean. This reminds me, I really must put the under tray back on the XC90. Oh, just about lower this down. I think I might just slide it underneath the car rather than getting it too much in the way. Doesn't seem to be too bad oil leak wise. A few ones in the places that I remember. I'll show you in a second actually. It does tend to leak down from above a little bit, but yeah, overall not too bad. Let's bring you in for a closer look. Yeah, so these do, basically there's a leak on a little breather. I think it's a preheater on the manifold above. I really must get around at some point to fixing it. It's pretty minor, but it is a bit annoying because it does cause this sort of oil mist underneath. But overall, everything else doesn't look too bad. I'm also now going to find out whether or not Sean, because Sean was the last person to do this oil change, over-torqued this bolt. Better not have not done, Sean, you'll be in trouble. But before I do that, I just wanted to talk about this boost pipe. Now, many years ago, I did a repair on this with some JB Weld steel stick. And that repair, I think, has lasted 30, maybe even 40,000 miles. I'll put some pictures up on screen of what I did. But basically there's a bracket back here that fails, and it puts a small crack or a pea-sized hole in the pipe. And I think at the time I was quoted about £500 just for the parts, let alone then going through the process of actually getting everything sorted out and put back together. But I managed to effect a little repair with some JB Weld. What I might do, I'm going to go and grab my phone because I'm not going to be able to get the GoPro up into there to show you. But I'll show you where the repair is, and we'll see how it's holding up over time. So that's where I repaired it originally about 40,000 miles ago, 40,000 miles ago. And that seems to be holding up rather nicely. And that's just done the job. That's my anti-vibration dampening bracket there. That's to stop it from the pipe from rubbing against the gearbox there and putting another hole in it. That seems to have continued to do that job. So yeah, that's held up really nicely for what was a very cheap repair. So I mean, I did record that entire process, and maybe I should consider putting that video out. It obviously was in days before I had microphones and other bits and pieces, but it might be nice. I might stick that up in the winter when I'm recording less stuff, just so you've got a little bit of a retrospective of how I went about doing that repair, especially as it's proven itself with how long it's lasted. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get to that. Let's get this oil drained. Right, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of an enormous mess do you think I'm going to make? And also, is this over-torqued? Is this over-tightened? Right, so that's definitely lefty-loosey. Sean would have done this one, so Not over tightened at all. Thank you, Sean. Next time I see you, I'm going to give you a massive hug. Yeah, it's nice that it wasn't over taut. Now, here's the bit where we always make a big mess. Are we going to get it on the GoPro? Are we going to get it over the floor? Or am I going to get some scalding red hot oil right down my arm? In fact, freeze frame, put in the comments what you think is going to happen. Ooh, I've got the first dribble. It's going to go everywhere, it always does. It's a tidal wave of inevitable, horrible, red-hot despair. Here we go, it's coming. Here we go. Not too bad, actually, for me. That was quite a good dismount. I even managed to get the bolt lock. Right, let that drain out. One thing I did forget to do, by the way, is I haven't taken the oil cap off, which would have helped it drain, so I'm just going to go and do that now. Yeah, this might be getting on for the least amount of oil I've ever had on a driveway. Clean the plug up whilst that's doing its last stage of draining. Ah, the wind's got up. The wind's got up just in time. Just in time for the dribbly bit. So two points you can guarantee the wind will get up. During the dribbly bit and during the phase where you're pouring new oil in. I think you reused that, Sean. I need to have a word with you about that. Should always be a new one. Okay, so I am back with a nice new crush seal. Ugh. Said I wasn't going to get it everywhere, and I've just splooshed it everywhere. So let's thread that back in. Yeah, I think at some point somebody has hung off this plug, but it's not too bad. I'll give that a very slight nip up, and then I'm going to go and grab the torque wrench. There we go. I'll grab the torque wrench because we want this nipped up to 35 Newton meters. You know, not like when I was doing the oil change on the XC90 and I was having to hang off the bloody sump plug. Oh, f***ing hell. As you can probably guess, I'm still cross about that. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the display. $35. There we go. That should be more than tight enough. I will obviously run this with the under tray off briefly, just to make sure that that doesn't leak. I'll give it one more check, just for good luck. Yeah, 35 Newton meters. Done. Right, okay, and before we can get at the oil filter, which is hidden behind here, we need to get the engine cover off. Incidentally, you might notice I've left the dipstick sort of poking out the hole. That's a little trick I learned from watching Raymond Ray's repairs, and that's just a key, a reminder to me that right now this car has no oil in it, so that I don't accidentally start it with no oil in it. Although that said, as an extra precaution, I've actually just taken the keys out of the ignition and gone and put them in the house, just to be doubly sure that I don't start it with no oil in it, because starting it with no oil in it would be substantially suboptimal. Now, last time I did this, I think I actually lost one of these clips. I think I pinged it off deep somewhere in the engine bay, which is why I'm using a trim tool today. It's a bit easier to get them out. Lift this cover out of the way when it wants to come off. There we go. Before I try and do anything, if I just tilt down a little bit now, you'll probably be able to see where the oil filter housing is. Unfortunately, it happens to sit right on top of the alternator. So I'm going to throw a couple of microfiber cloths down there just to catch any crap and crud that might otherwise spill on the alternator, because I really don't want to get oil either in the alternator or all over the belt. Obviously, it's then important to remember that you have a cloth in this area of the auxiliary belt, because the other thing you really don't want to do is wrap anything up on the auxiliary belt when you're trying to start the car. Much like the diesel filter housing, when I tighten this back up in a bit, it'll be 25.5 Newton meters. Well, that's done up quite tight. Ooh, it's very tight. Why is that so tight? Oh, that shouldn't be that tight. I'll just have to give this a couple of shocks. You did this up tight, Sean. Fucking hell. I might need to go and get a longer bar on this, yeah. Oh God. Oh, fucking hell. That's very much over tightened. That's certainly not 25 Newton meters. Yeah, shouldn't have needed a long bar to undo that. I'll have to check the condition of this housing and just make sure there's no cracks or splits in it. I wonder if he had a leak with it and just tightened it up. I'll try and do it without making too much mess. There we go. Right, so I'm just going to give these threads around here just a quick blast and clean. Because like I say, if you get any grit or anything on the threads against the seal, that tends to be what causes them to leak. And the annoying thing is, because of where they've positioned it on this generation of the engine, they can wind up leaking down onto the alternator, which is a bit frustrating. I have had an oil change done at a garage where I wound up having to take the filter off and change the seal and clean it all up to stop it from leaking. Right, okay, so I just need to get this existing oil filter out of the assembly like that. I'll say, I think that was definitely ready. And then we need to give this housing a really, really good clean. Yeah, I really could do with getting like a little pick set or something at some point. Come on, out you come. Don't go back in. Don't you go going back in. It's going back in, little bugger. There we go, that's better luck. Right, I'm just going to give that another blast around there now. Again, inside that sealing surface, if there's any grit in there, that's usually where it'll leak past. So I need to get all that out, nice and clean. So the other thing I need to do quite desperately is deal with that oil trail that's currently coming off that filter before it goes all over the driveway as well. So right now I've got all that cleaned up. I'll just drop this new seal back in. Nice and home. And like I say, that at the end of the day is what's going to do the sealing on the filter housing itself. It's the seals that do the job, not how tight you have them. And the last thing is to just click this back into place so it's ready to go into the housing. You can hear that rubber seal starting to do its job. Alright, I'm just going to tighten that up initially with this, and then we'll get the torque wrench on the job and just make sure that we've got it right. All I want to do with this for now is keep turning it basically until it stops. Okay, so I've got my torque wrench set up. Hopefully you can see the display on it. Just set that a bit lower actually, you might be able to see it a bit better then. And like I say, we want 25.5 Newton meters on this housing. So there we go, that's tight enough. I'll just do it again for good luck. And that's it, that's as tight as that needs to be. There we go. So that should be all torqued up. Right, now we just need to get some oil in. Okay, so now we're just in the pouring things phase of the job. These larger Volvo ones are never the nicest ones to pour either. But the good news is all of this should be going straight in. I've paid for it, I want it out of that bottle. And go straight to another litre. I'm reasonably confident about this. And then I will check the measure. I'm expecting it to take about 5.5 litres. Right, now can you see what I've forgotten about here already? This cloth. Let's pull that out of there now before that causes a disaster. See, yeah, that's showing a little way under the max marker, but obviously what we haven't done yet is we haven't primed the oil filter. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and grab the key, kick it over very briefly, especially now I've removed that cloth out of the way there, let it idle until the oil pressure light goes out, and then we'll check it and just make sure that we're happy. There's way less oil up, it's right on the bottom of the dipstick, so we can start adding some oil back in and bringing that level back up. Alright, so I'm actually going to hedge my bets here. Rather than opening the new 1 litre bottle, I've got half a litre left in this Comma bottle that I did from another oil change a while ago. If I can avoid opening a new one, that's probably going to be ideal, and then I can keep the new one as a spare. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much again on the halfway marker. I might just see if I've got an open bottle in the boot. I'd like to put another 100 ml in, I think, just to bring that level up to 2/3. I might have added a tiny little bit too much there. Let's hope that doesn't come back to bite me in the bottom later. Yeah, there's still a row of X's visible, so I think it is now more at 2/3. So I think we'll go with that. Before we bother putting the cover back on, I'm going to do the air filter because it'll be easier to do without all the other gubbins here in the way. Alright, let's get these out now. These are all T20 Torx. I seem to remember this middle one is stripped out, annoyingly. I much prefer them where they've got clips, to be honest with you. Like I say, there is enough room, just about, just to pull this out and slot the new one in. That air filter, to be fair, I mean, it's not terrible. It's not brilliant, but I was expecting much dirtier elements than that. I'd have probably gotten away with not replacing that, to be honest with you. Again, yes, I could vacuum out the housing, but you know something, it'll be full of leaves within 3 days, so there's no point. Because this housing is designed to clamp around the foam edge, and they don't always clamp down fully straight away. It's obviously lost its threads inside there, I think, so there's always going to be a little bit of a gap there. I might see if I can run some PTFE or something at some point on the inside of these, but there's enough holding it for now. Right, I'm just going to kick it over again now briefly, run it for a couple of minutes and just check for any leaks. One thing I nearly forgot, I do this more often than when I just service the car, but it's been a while. Let's top this up and get it everywhere in the process, obviously. That'll do, I think. We'll call that topped up. There we go, so everything's all hunky-dory up top and off camera. I've just been and put the under tray back on, so next step is we'll go and do the topped on stuff. Right, now I'm not going to go into in-depth on this. I have covered how to scan one of these before, and so I'm just going to do a quick scan through now and just see if we've got anything coming up at the moment. Okay, so scan's complete. Engine control module, we've got 4, which is interesting. What's that? I've not seen those codes before. They all seem to be the same sort of thing. So we'll see if there's anything else. Power operated tailgate module, we know about that because many years ago I replaced the struts on this with manual ones, so that's not a surprise. Parking assistance camera fault, it does occasionally flicker, so yeah, frequency modulation, no signal, that's not a surprise, so not too concerned about that one. And driver's door module, again, is something I know about, motor and folding mirror, because when I try and fold my mirrors, basically they don't. So that one folds, but that one doesn't. So I've got some form of electrical gremlin there. The other thing at the moment is I don't think the heating element works in that mirror either. So there's some form of electrical fault in that door at some point I've got to try and sort out. So nothing unexpected there. The turbo ones I've honestly not seen before, but they've obviously not been enough to trigger an engine management light. So I think what I'm going to do, I'll clear all the DTCs, clear them out. Okay, I'm going to go back, exit auto scan. I'm just going to start it very briefly. Make sure we've got no errors coming up. One message, time for regular maintenance. We're going to deal with that in a second. Right, so I'm just doing a second scan now, having cycled the engine on and off, just to see if any of those DTCs come back or not. Okay, so it doesn't look like we've got any stored DTCs. Obviously that may change once the car's gone through a few drive cycles, but I'm happy enough with that. Right, we'll exit auto scan and we're going to go into hot functions and we want to do an oil reset. Resetting service service reminder indicator. So key position 2, ignition on, which I believe it is. And we're going to go automatic reset. Alright, and that should be successful. If I've done that correctly now, if I just check on here, knock that off, and then go and start it. Go, no vehicle messages, time for regular service has gone away. There is another process you can follow if you want to do it manually on the stalk. I think it's holding various buttons there and holding down on there, but as I've got the top on, I may as well use that to reset it. So that's it for this video. I'm going to take the car out for a quick drive, make sure I've not got any problems, and yeah, that's it. And I will see you in a future video. The next one I think most likely is going to be Rustival. There are a few jobs to do to the XC90, but to be honest with you, given some of the challenges I've got working at home on this driveway, I think I'm going to farm out both the cam belt and the wheel bearing, just because it's a big beast and I'm worried about having it up on a jack for a long period of time, especially the wheel bearing, because I'm probably going to have to actually hammer on that knuckle to get it undone. But anyway, that's me rambling along. Next video, like I say, will probably be Rustival, hopefully in VEP. So thank you very much for watching. Please do consider subscribing before you go, and I'll see you in a future one. Cheerio. 5 cylinders. It is National Dog Barking Day today. It's been as quiet as a mouse here. I've just started setting up and somebody is currently screaming at their dog that's barking. And it's basically come up to service time, as you've probably already guessed by the intro. Words have completely and totally left me. That's not a good start, is it? Shall we try that again? That was a little bit cringy at the end. GoPro, stop recording. Obviously now I've started recording, cars are going to start coming up and down the road. And relax. Hello there, and in this video, I've had this car back almost a year and it's everything... Car going by, wait for that to go by. I'll have drunk this coffee by the time I've recorded this intro. I've definitely drunk this coffee by the time I've recorded this intro and all these noisy cars have pissed off. To have a workshop and a space that would be quiet, that's the dream. One day maybe. Right, shall we have another go? Right, okay, so somebody's now drilling. For the love of God, somebody's now drilling. GoPro, stop recording.